Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Drop Live on Twitter at 9 a.m. every single weekday, except for yesterday because Twitter broke. But who's surprised that Twitter broke? Are you surprised, Perrin?
I'm never surprised with Twitter. I mean, at this point, this platform ceases to surprise me in any way whatsoever. Don't worry, I love you, Twitter.
We still love you, Twitter, and today we're talking about video games. But we're talking about games more specifically that get insanely popular and then stay insanely popular for a long period of time. And why does that matter to you? Well, if you're looking to grow your live stream on Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, Facebook gaming, or you're looking to grow your YouTube channel in particular, you're going to want to select a franchise or a game that is going to last a long time. And so we've been professionally, for a living, analyzing this stuff for the last 10 years. In fact, Perrin, I'm going to kick it over to you in a moment, but I remember about 7 years ago, you developed complex algorithms and spreadsheets that we used at a former employer over at Broadband TV, one of the biggest multi-channel networks, the biggest multi-channel network, to actually track video games, to track their popularity over time. And we would end up giving them a trend score and then doing weekly reporting on the trend score of video games and specifically how relevant that game was to creators. So, I mean, you've really thought about this, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we put a lot of time and effort into building this kind of like database in Google spreadsheets, and this was complicated. It automatically imported graphs and built them and pulled out relevant data, and I built a trend score for each game, and it was based off of search interests, volume volume of people creating content about it, the things that we've talked about on this podcast, and the whole reason to do that was to be able to leverage trends in gaming, but not just leverage them because one's big, be able to predict what is going to be the next big gaming trend. Because at that point, this was probably a good 4 to 5 years ago, if not more, I had gone through and tried to do this, just kind of looking at the gaming industry as a whole and being entrenched in it and trying to predict. And I've been wrong over and over and over again. I think first it was Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's like, Star Wars IP plus MMO, like how could it fail? It found a way.
It found a way to fail, indeed. It sure did. It's still around today, though, so.
Technically, it didn't fail, but in terms of it being a large gaming trend to be leveraged from a creator standpoint, I think it did fail in that capacity specifically.
Yep.
So it was about how to find big gaming trends before they happen so that you can build up content leading up to this event, and then you can take advantage of all the search interest at its pinnacle point. If you've ever gone to Google Trends and looked at a specific game and looked at what the line looks like over its entire history, most games have one point where they're the highest search interest, and that's when the game launches. They never reach that point ever again. Now, there are outliers for sure, like Minecraft is a great example, but almost every game has this. So from a creator standpoint or from like a website standpoint, let's say you wanted to make a website that writes about video games and publishes written blog article content about video games. You want to have a ton of content built in for that title before that peak hits of search interest, so you can capitalize on all of that search interest. So that was the point. The point was, and that's what we're talking about today. What is it about games that makes them reach that pinnacle point, first of all, and what about games has them stay at a really high level of that point? And that's the answer. That's a question that I don't know if we found like a concrete answer to, but we're going to try to get there today.
We do have a concrete answer, I think, but it's not. We do have a concrete answer as to why games get popular and stay popular, but it's really difficult to be absolutely sure that a game is going to stay popular. Because that requires proper execution from the developers, and it requires, knowing whether gamers are really going to latch on to the finer points of the game. And that's something that is difficult until you actually have your hands on the game and you've played it yourself. And we're not in the age of demos anymore, where you can actually truly try a game for real before it launches. Like demos back in the day used to be almost the final product of a game, and you just get a slice of it to try. Now closed betas and betas are all you can get your hands on, and that comes with the caveat of, oh yeah, and this thing's pretty broken. And so that's what actually kills games on the back end most of the time, is that the game is more or less broken or it doesn't have enough features, and they're planning on fixing it over time. So let's talk about the beginning stages of a game's life cycle. And if you guys out there are watching right now and you're trying to figure out which games can I cover that are going to grow my channel over time, you're going to want to listen all the way to the end of this episode, because we've grown channels to over 1 million subscribers on YouTube for gaming. We've run live streaming destinations that work directly with Blizzard Entertainment and had big contracts. We've grown even kids gaming channels to hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So let's tell you about it. So before a game comes out, the number one way to understand whether there's going to be a big spike when it launches is to take a look, obviously, at pre-release buzz, right? And so some of your sources for that pre-release buzz can be not just what's in your feed and what your friends are talking about. Maybe that'll flag something for you. But you want to be going to Google Trends, and you want to look on Google Trends and see literally how many people are searching for that game on YouTube in particular. Now, you can look at Google search too, but searching on YouTube in particular. And when they announce the game and the first trailer launches, look at how many views that trailer has. Then, in the subsequent months after that trailer launches, that reveals the gameplay in particular. The gameplay trailer is the most important one to look at, because who cares about a cinematic trailer? As we know, cinematic trailers are full of lies. When they see the gameplay trailer, if there's a mega spike, then you cross-reference that mega spike in interest around a game with Reddit. You need to go to Reddit and see how many super hardcore fans are so excited about that game based on one gameplay trailer that they decided to jump on Reddit and get super active in a subreddit about that game. And if that subreddit starts to have tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers pre-release, and there are thousands of people sitting in Reddit chomping at the bit, waiting for more information, you know that that game is going to have a mega spike when it launches.
So a couple other items I would look at too. What is the marketing budget for the game? Do they have multi-million-dollar marketing budget? If so, there's far more likelihood that there's going to be more people in that subreddit. There's going to be more people talking about it, and there's going to be more people creating content about it. Another thing that's an interesting gauge is go on Twitch, listen to your favorite streamers who cover multi-games, and see if they're excited to cover this game and how excited they are to cover it. That will kind of dictate when this game rolls out how much concurrent viewership there will be on Twitch, which is also an important number. These are all tangible things you can look at, but there's an intangible element here, and it's what if the game fails? I mean, we run into this situation so often where games get overhyped and then they're under-delivered because it's just not what we expected. They just didn't deliver on the full vision that their marketing department marketed on. And this has happened over and over and over again. How can you predict that happening? There are ways to do it. You have to be, it's tough as a gamer. It can be really, really tough. But you have to make sure you don't have rose-tinted glasses on when you're looking at the game and what's going to come. And you have to look at it rationally and in an abstract. You have to look at it like, okay, these guys are saying they're going to do this. Is it feasible for them to actually do this? Is it actually going to be out by launch? Is that something that they're really going to actually have? There's few game developers and publishers that I would actually trust to deliver on what they promise. There's only a few out there, CD Projekt Red being potentially one of them, Rockstar Games being maybe another. I wouldn't trust EA to deliver on a vision.
Don't trust Blizzard. Not anymore. I'm sorry. I love you, everybody at Blizzard I've ever worked with. You can't trust Blizzard anymore. They don't deliver on their promises. With Warcraft 3 Reforged, it's really clear to me that they aren't going to deliver on quality games no matter what. That title really just kind of ruined Blizzard for me and my trust for them. I cannot believe they marred one of their best games of all time and then just released a broken piece of garbage. I cannot believe it.
Yeah. For me, it was Heroes of the Storm. I was always wary to get on the Blizzard bandwagon as a content creator and to get in on a game in advance and then cover it and knowing it's going to be successful because it's Blizzard. I can trust Blizzard, right? I finally started doing that with Heroes of the Storm, and it was just, no. That was like the one time that they actually failed. Overwatch did really, really well, obviously. But since Heroes of the Storm, it sounds like they have not been doing great. So it would be hard to trust Blizzard. Ubisoft is another one, difficult to trust. There are so many big game developers and publishers that it's just really difficult to trust what they're promising versus what's actually going to be delivered, which screws you over as a content creator because it screws over the gaming industry and gamers as a whole. They're going to get jaded, and they've been screwed over again. Lots of gamers will quit, and the search interest and the viewership of the content around the game will decrease. So let's go back to this main question here of the stream. How does a game get big and stay big? Let's take an example, and I want to talk about this one specifically because it's researched. Grand Theft Auto 5. I think it's one of the best examples. And I listed Rockstar Games as one that maybe is a little bit more trustworthy earlier. Rockstar Games and its history has not published really that many games. And they take a long time to do each iteration. And we know what to expect whenever they are going to do a new game. We know pretty much what it's going to be. And then they deliver on that. The people and the creators who got into Grand Theft Auto before it came out, even a year in advance, when that game, GTA 5 specifically, when that game came out, those creators blew up and they're multimillionaires now. And now GTA 5 has been around in the top sphere of streamer titles for a while. It's sunk. It's been many, many years, right? But recently it's come back because modding. Modding is another way. If a developer makes their game moddable, that the game is going to have much more longevity, and it's another green flag for you to get in on that trend. Skyrim being a other great example. CD Projekt Red, this is why their games have a little bit more longevity. The Witcher 3, moddable. I don't know if Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be. They're talking about having support for modding there, and I want to go ahead and bring up some of the numbers that we look at when we're looking to analyze this. And I've got kind of Google Trends open here, and of course our here. Let me move our little window out of the way. There we go. So this is kind of Google Trends. You can see this in the screen share here, Perrin. But this red line here is Grand Theft Auto 5, and this is 2013 when the game launched. And so obviously it spiked when it launched, but do you see how it's maintained about 20 to 40% of the interest that it had at launch all the way through its entire life cycle here? And what I'm comparing it to right now is Cyberpunk 2077 right now in this timeline. So what you can see is that the most anticipated game of this year is minuscule in comparison to mega titles like GTA 5 when they launch. And so GTA 5, I think, is probably, like Minecraft, one of the ultimate examples to look at of a game that if you start covering it, even years after it comes out, you can still be successful with this game. GTA 5 will be a popular game for 5 years from now. It has been holding steady for 7 years, and it's been one of the top 5 most popular games on YouTube since its release. And sure, trends come in, trends go, games spike and they launch and they disappear. But the important thing I want to show with this graphic is that GTA spiked and then it stayed for years after that. And there's only a handful of games out there that kind of have a timeline that look like that when you go look at Google Trends. And another one that you could enter here that look very similar to that are video games like Minecraft, where Minecraft, if you look at it over time, as you can see, it spiked and then it held steady over time, and it's even increasing in popularity today. Do you see the longevity of these mega titles like this? And Perrin is talking about modding. Well, both Grand Theft Auto 5 and Minecraft obviously have modding, right? And so a lot of people are looking at PvP games as one of those things where, like, I've got to cover a PvP game. Sure, I mean, Minecraft has some PvP, and GTA 5 obviously has some PvP, but modding is what carries these mega titles through, and is going to carry them through in the long, long, long run. Because there's always going to be a flavor of the week PvP game that comes in. Some of them may rise, some of them may fall, but new PvP games and franchises get swapped out every year or two within individual franchises, but these moddable games
may have a new version of themselves every 5 to 7 years, which means you could cover one of these moddable games for a significant portion of your life, for an entire chapter of your life. Are there any other examples you want me to pull up here to show that longevity, such as like maybe Skyrim?
Yeah, Skyrim would be a good one, and it's probably the most well known. It's the most, I think, the most moddable game out of all these, and it's been out since a little bit before GTA. I mean, almost 10 years. Jeez. We're due for a new Elder Scrolls game, although it's probably not coming for like another 4 years. But the more moddable it is, the more longevity it can have. So this is why when I list developers, you keep in mind what their stance is on modding games. So CD Projekt Red has always been really amicable in terms of keeping their games open to at least some sort of moddability, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Plus they're also a developer that really tries to deliver on what they promise and not to overmarket and overhype their products. So I think Cyberpunk 2077 will be a really, really interesting delivery for them, because I want to see them deliver on another big title and do it successfully. Then they'll have like this perfect track record. I'm really worried that or scared that they'll mess up and they'll break that track record because they're so perfect so far. And they're one of the only developers that's easy to trust. But here's the thing. Whenever you kind of go in a boat like that, so let's say you put all of your supplies in the Grand Theft Auto boat, right? Your Grand Theft Auto 5, you're in this for years. Man, I got to play Grand Theft Auto 5 for years and years and years. Maybe not necessarily, right? You can transition to the next Grand Theft Auto game. Whenever 6 comes, you're already built up as a creator for Grand Theft Auto. You can just jump over to 6. And then you can kind of become and branch out if you want to become a Rockstar Games creator because of the way that you cover Grand Theft Auto, and you'll be able to jump to their next title from there. So in terms of longevity, even when that game dies, you've hit the trend, which is more important than the game itself. And that trend allows you some certain creative freedoms in terms of how you choose to make your content and what game you choose to play. That is a situation that you want to be in. You want to have that flexibility, because I don't think anybody wants to be locked to one game for 10 years. That's just not really feasibly or human possible. You're going to want to have some diversity and some change. So how do you get that while also kind of maintaining your consistency as a creator? I think that's the challenge.
It is, and an example of that is Typical Gamer. We talk about him all the time because he's one of the original TGN partners we worked with from early days. He grew as a GTA 5 creator back when the game spiked. Right over here, we're showing you that red line, or the red line here, spike. He grew then, and then he transitioned into covering other games, obviously, that are not GTA, like Ark, like Fortnite. Obviously, he still does GTA content from time to time. And as you can see, the content that made him popular was modding content. And he still is doing GTA mods to this day when interesting mods come out. Thanos mod, Shark mod, car mods. And the beautiful thing about modding, and we keep talking about modding, and you might not be into it, it's up to you. But the beautiful thing about modding is it can make a popular game last forever. And this is just a perfect example of that. And so developers, like we talked about a moment ago, developers that are like, yeah, I need to be careful with my IP, and I don't want you ruining my IP, and I don't want the community, when they say things like, we're having conversations around modding, and we'll get back to you. When they say things like that, that means that they're not going to support modding, by the way. And so whenever they say we really value what the community has to contribute and we have an exciting future for this game, whenever people ask about modding, they aren't going to support modding. And so if you're choosing between game A or game B, and game B has the possibility of modding, you should go with game B. Just almost every single time, the game that has modding will be a more popular game and a more viable game. Let's also talk about some other factors that you need to think about. So we talked earlier, you need to know what the marketing budget is for this game. As if you have access to the spreadsheets of this company and you know what their bank account looks like. So the way that you can tell what their budget is for marketing is to look at how active are they in going to expensive marketing activities pre-launch. So Does their Facebook page have lots of likes? The reason why I bring that up is like, well, you might be like, well, what would likes matter? It matters because you have to pay for likes on Facebook. And so if their Facebook page has 500,000 or 1 million plus likes pre-launch, that means that they spent lots of money to market the game before it launched. Important. Same thing with Twitter. If their Twitter account has lots of likes pre-launch, that's because they probably paid for those. Another thing you can look at to see their marketing budget is how many professionally produced marketing videos are they releasing on YouTube in particular, and do those videos have a high views per video average? So when new games come out and they create a new YouTube channel for their game, they literally have no audience. So when games all of a sudden get 1 million views on their trailer that just came out, it's not because the trailer was like super interesting. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's an exceptional trailer for a new game, and it gets mega coverage from every outlet like IGN, GameSpot, etc. But it's because they paid money to get millions of views on those trailer videos. And so if you see one trailer video that has like, 1 million views on it and the next one has like 10,000 views, that is a huge red flag, actually, in terms of the developer and how much they're willing to pump into marketing and pump into the budget for their game. That means they have a tight budget. If you see one piece of successful marketing for a game and then the next piece of marketing gets no traction, that means the people in the marketing department are like, we don't have enough money to market the next piece of content, so we're not going to. That's a major red flag. They shouldn't be in a situation where they don't have enough money before their game comes out to market their own game. That means that they aren't going to have enough money after their game comes out to market their game. And that's the next thing to talk about. A lot of companies will pump and dump. They'll pump money into their game, they'll get everybody to buy it at launch, and then they'll dump that game. And you sat there and you covered it pre-launch for a year. And then when it launched, you did your live stream and you did your guides on it. And then you're wondering, where's the developer? Where'd they go? Did they just ghost me? Yes, they did. They pumped and they dumped. And the only way to understand whether they're going to pump and dump you is to just look at their history of how they handle games prior to that point. Have they done pump and dumps in the past? And so the biggest culprits of pump and dumps, the number one biggest culprit of pump and dumps is EA. So anything developed by EA or the umbrella of companies under EA is at extremely high risk of a pump and dump. So if you look at just recent news, Battlefield 5, they just pump and dump that game. It's gone. They discontinued coverage for their biggest shooter franchise, essentially. It's gone. Now, obviously, Apex Legends came out since then, and so they're like, oh, we've got a shinier game that makes more money. Pump and dump on Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 sold 7 million copies at launch. That wasn't good enough. Pump and dump. And so if you're looking to cover games and have them have longevity over time, developers like EA are extremely high risk. Anthem, pump and dump. That game's dead. You get me? So be really careful. The only companies that I know of right now that don't pump and dump is CD Projekt Red. And if Blizzard comes out with a game like within the Overwatch franchise, then maybe they won't pump and dump that. Maybe Diablo 4, they won't pump and dump that. And Rockstar Games. That's it. Everybody else is at a high risk of pump and dump.
To add in another factor, so that's a lot there to think about when you're choosing a game, right? You can begin to understand why, myself and AWOL, you're having trouble, and we're kind of in the middle of this story as we're talking about it right now, picking a game to cover because there's a lot to consider. The last aspect is like, can you enjoy playing it? Because if you have to be on camera and you want to be charismatic, you want to be excited about playing it, you want that excitement to seep through the screen and for people to feel it. That's what makes your content magnetic. That's the stuff that everyone's looking for, right? So not only do you have all of these kind of like rational criteria that you've got to like look at, you also have to look at the emotional of, can I like really get into this and enjoy it on screen, not just for a week, but for a long time? Are there things about this game that can renew interest? Can I tackle it in new ways that will keep me excited and keep me coming back? The bar is really high for a game that can deliver on all of those things that we need as a creator, for a gaming creator specifically. but the bar has been continually set lower and lower and lower by the gaming industry as a whole. So it's so much more difficult to find some of these titles. And I know it seems easy just by looking at the top games being like, oh, Fortnite, obviously, Valorant, obviously. Actually, no. Those games, like, I'm sure Fortnite will be around for a while. I'm sure Valorant might be around for a while, but they don't fit any of the criteria that we're looking for, realistically. You do have trends and games that defy all of this stuff. And they can just be a random addition at the right place at the right time, and they just blow up because somehow that's just what everybody was looking for, and we didn't even know it. Those are the ones that can be maddening because you wish you could predict them, but there's like no way you can. There's even no matter how tuned you are with the gaming industry, it's very, very hard to make those predictions, and all you can do is latch on to the trend post-trend. You still don't want to be in that position, latching onto the trend post-trend. It's like a stock trader, right? You don't want to be latching on to a trade after it's already going up or it's already going down. You want to be in before that change happens to get the maximum amount. Don't follow the trend. You want to be a part of the trend as it's occurring. For those type of titles, I think it's nigh impossible. It's possible to be in the right place at the right time, but having predictable elements to get you there, that's really, really tough to say. So some things that help, we talked about search interest. So what I'm doing specifically for me is I was looking for a game, and I thought like, is there a game that I always come back to in my life? Because I've been a gamer for most of my life. And I try to think about, is there a game that I can come back to that constantly renews my interest? And even though I might get bored of it after a while and stop playing it, eventually down the road, I kind of come back to it at some point. And I do have a game like that. So I took that game, I looked up the search interest, I went to Facebook, we go into Facebook advertiser, see if there is an audience set for that specific game. I'm talking about Skyrim, by the way. And there is. And if you guys are wondering how to do that, if you want to look at how to do that specifically, it's tough to walk you through it right now on a podcast. I'd be happy to do it if you send me a message on Twitter or something like that. It's pretty easy. Go to Facebook advertiser, look up audiences, type in your game and see if it exists. If nothing comes up, it doesn't exist. It's going to be hard to grow. So you want to check those items, check Twitch, check YouTube search. I use TubeBuddy on YouTube to see what the search interest demand is and what the competition is. And I evaluate the game itself. Is it something that I can play over and over? I can mod Skyrim to the end of my days, and it'll give me something interesting to look forward to. So I think that's what I'm going to be going for, because it fits all of those criteria. It's a little lower on search interest now. We saw the graphics going down.
Yeah, but it's still more popular than something even like Cyberpunk 2077. And, and it can expand into the Elder Scrolls franchise. I got to go to work. So we're going to end the podcast right there. We're multiple minutes over. I'm late for a meeting. So I need to go take care of some of my clients. So thank you so much for watching. And we hope that you join us live on Twitter. Continue to join us. Feel free to ask questions on Twitter as well. We're happy to help you out. And replays of each of these podcasts will be available on YouTube, Digital Drop Podcast YouTube channel, video versions with graphs and our beautiful, I'd say ridiculously handsome faces, and also audio versions on every single podcasting platform. If you want to listen in the car while you're doing dishes, while you're doing other things, we understand. You can't look at a screen all the time. Every podcasting platform, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Please, I'm begging here. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Go choose the right game for you. And just realize that any game that you choose to build your channel is a gamble, unless you jump onto a franchise that's been successful for 5+ years already. It's just a huge gamble, no matter how you shake it out. Try to put the odds in your favor, try to do your best research, but just realize you might fail, and that's okay. Go pick up a different game if you do. Adios, amigos, and good luck creating.